Well, thank you all. It is great to be here for tonight's debate between the candidates for Secretary of State. This is going to be a closely watched race, probably the biggest race on the ballot this year in the state of Indiana, and it's one we're going to be covering closely at Fox 59 and CBS 4 and on our Sunday program In Focus. We're streaming tonight's debate right now on our streaming app, Fox 59 Now, and we'll have more coverage of it on In Focus this Sunday morning.
We're looking forward to that, and I have a few rules that I'm going to go over before we bring the candidates up. I'm Leslie Weidenbener from IBJ, and we hope that you will also go to IBJ.com to follow along on coverage from tonight and throughout the race. Each candidate tonight will have 60 seconds for an opening statement and 60 seconds to answer each question. At the moderator's discretion, so Dan and I, candidates may receive up to 30 seconds for a rebuttal or a response. And if we feel like maybe there's a little something there we need to clarify, we're going to give them an extra 15 seconds or so. It does. I have a feeling we might have a few of those. A timekeeper is providing a countdown up here on stage, and we've asked the candidates to stop promptly when their time runs out so we can keep the debate fair and on schedule, and we will jump in if we need to. There will be no audience questions tonight, and we ask you to help us maintain a respectful discussion by refraining from cheering, booing, or other reactions during the debate. And believe me, I know how hard that is. Applause will be, of course, welcome when Dan introduces the candidates. So applause then, and at the conclusion, after the closing statements. And finally, each candidate will have 60 seconds for those closing statements in reverse order of the opening statements. So Dan, why don't you introduce our candidates?
Let's meet the four candidates for Secretary of State. On this side of the stage, the Republican candidate, Max Engling, and Libertarian candidate, Lori Shillings. And on this side of the stage, Democratic candidate, Bayh, and Lincoln Party candidate, Greg Ballard.
Stage. One more round of applause for them. Get it out of your system.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started.
All right, we did a draw to see who would go first. Mr. Engling, you are first up.
Thank you very much, Dan and Leslie. Thank you to Matt and the Indy Chamber for having us out here. We appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. So I am a Christian. I've been married for almost 15 years. We're going to hit that next week, so pray for me on the campaign trail. And we have 4 kids, and we live just north of here in Hamilton County. And I'm running to defend our election integrity and ensure that our shared Hoosier values continue here in the state of Indiana. Now, I love this state. I want my children to live here, and I'm committed to making this state better. We're doing good things, but I'm committed to making this state better so for the next 50 years, for the next generation, that our kids, our families want to stay here in the state of Indiana. So I'm thankful to be here and excited for this debate.
Thank you. Ms. Shillings.
Thank you for being here and for allowing me to participate in your event. My name is Lori Shillings, and I'm the Libertarian option on your ballot. And I've been in Indiana my entire life. I live in Hamilton County. If you're tired of government leadership that wants to keep you divided and fighting each other instead of united for a purpose, I'm running for you. Libertarian principles haven't changed in 50 years. We believe in transparency, individual rights, ethical decision-making, and that government should be efficient and functional. And that is what I want to bring to this race. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shilling. Mr. Ballard.
The right to vote is sacred. I served 23 years in the Marines in war and in peace to protect that right to vote. But right now, the Secretary of State's office is in shambles. Cleaning it up is not an entry-level job. When I was the mayor of Indianapolis, we stared down the Department of Justice and the EPA for that federal mandate for sewers, saving ratepayers $800 million by re-engineering that project to be more effective. 700 cities were going through similar experiences, but it was Indianapolis that had the courage to stand up and tell them, we're going to do it our way, not your way. We brought in Six Sigma, a process improvement program that eventually saved taxpayers $15 to $16 million per year. That was also how we found out that it took 23 steps to fix a pothole in 11 days. We took that down to 11 steps in 2 to 3 days. I don't know what they're doing right now. I could go on and on and on about that, but I manage $1 billion plus budget, 7,000 employees. Indiana needs someone in that office who is serious and has the experience to do it.
And Mr. Bayh.
Well, thank you so much to our moderators and our hosts here at the Indy Chamber for all the work you do in the central Indiana business community. I was raised in a family of public servants, and I was always taught growing up that if you choose to enter public life, you ought to do that to help your community, your state, your country, and not yourself. And so when I look at our state government, and I see statewide elected officials not using their positions of trust with the public, their offices, to benefit our state, but to benefit themselves, that kind of offends my sense of what a public servant should be. We're going to talk a lot tonight about policy. That will be at the heart of this campaign. But beyond the policy, this movement, which I hope you will support, is about something more than that. I think everyone in the room tonight can see how much divisiveness and anger and fear is wound up into our politics. I want to be the type of leader in state government that leads by bringing Hoosiers together around our common values, that leads by reaching out to people that I don't always agree with and trying to find common ground to deliver results for working people. That's what this campaign is about. Thank you.
That's right, thank you very much. We're going to begin with tonight's first question, which we will first address to Ms. Shillings. Elections and the voting process right now seem to be more and more politicized through the years, or guided by national political discourse. Can you assure voters here in Indiana that you'll work to oversee the voting process fairly and remain unbeholden to some of these national political interests?
Well, thank you for that question. This office should be run neutrally, it should be run ethically, and it should be run for the people of Indiana, not for anybody from Washington, D.C. Our elections are sovereign to the state. And I feel that the person in this role needs to have a strong backbone in order to accomplish that goal. And I'm not beholden to anybody in party leadership. My party says, do a good job, Lori. They don't tell me how to do my job. So I think that is something that I can bring to this race.
Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds to you on the question.
Couldn't agree more. Our government was formed for the states to do these elections, and federal interference, other than suggesting things or trying to help us out in some way, all that is fine. But these elections belong to the state, and that has to continue. And I think we're doing a really good job in some ways here in the state of Indiana with the election security aspect of this. But we always need to make sure that that gets stronger as we go. But your voter data was sent out to the federal government. That should not happen. This is a state event. It should be that way across all 50 states. It should not be the federal government's business.
Mr. Bayh, can you assure voters here in Indiana that you would remain unbeholden to some of these national political interests?
60 seconds. I've been very clear since the day that we launched this campaign that I will not run this office in a partisan way. That's unacceptable. And some of the things that have gone on have injected partisanship into a space where it should not exist, our elections. The mayor just mentioned, the Secretary of State sent the voter information, the private data of 5 million registered Hoosier voters to the federal government and the Department of Justice without even being asked. Now, I'm all for working with the federal government where it's necessary, but I think that should be a conversation and not just a wholesale delivery of our personal data without a very important reason. I look forward to working with the 92 county clerks throughout our state to continue to succeed on election integrity and run elections that are free from federal interference. Article 1 of our Constitution is very clear. It delegates authority to the states to run elections, and there's a reason for that. Our founders were very smart, in that 50 individual states are much harder to corrupt than a big federal government deciding from Washington, D.C. Thank you.
And Mr. Engling, 60 seconds to you on this question.
This is a statewide, constitutionally elected position where part of the job is to go to the State House to link arms with your statewide partners and continue to improve on the good things that the state of Indiana is doing. Now, as someone who's led a division before in government and as a senior staffer, as someone who has led multiple divisions, I know that your job is to execute well. It's not to create a partisan operation in the office. What I'll explain here is that structurally, the elections division is already nonpartisan. You have folks from both sides coming together to administer the elections, working directly with the clerks as well. And I'm committed to making sure that this is a nonpartisan position in the election division. I've also worked directly with the Clerks Association already. We've had a discussion. We put real dates on the calendar. We've brought them into the fold to say we're going to execute on this well in a nonpartisan fashion so that voters have confidence in the election and they know that their voice is heard and counts.
I'd like to follow up a question coming off of what Mr. Engling said. Would the other candidates also pledge to keep the election division, to think of it as a nonpartisan office and space? Ms. Shillings.
Of course, it's already got people in place from both parties, and it's that way by design, and that's the way it should be. And I'd like to bring third-party candidates like Libertarians in as well, because they have a separate voice for that, and more voices bring a more unified decision for the people of Indiana.
Mr. Ballard.
Just this is nonpartisan. Look what's happened in the last month. We had a party who wanted to subpoena voters to ask them why they voted. What country is this? We had 8 legitimately cast ballots overturned that changed the results of an election by partisan voting. That just happened in the last month. I will be independent in that office. I've said that from day one.
Mr. Bayh.
Of course, it should be nonpartisan, and I agree. The fact that we're even having a conversation in our state about hauling voters in front of a legal body and asking them to answer under oath about something so sacred and personal as their vote is concerning. And I think every candidate on this stage tonight should be able to call that out as deeply un-American.
And we'll get into that topic of what has happened here in that state Senate recount. Mr. Engling, briefly here.
I would just make one note for the audience here and the folks that are streaming at home that the final outcome of that recount was a unanimous decision by both Republicans and Democrats saying that they followed the law on every ballot, and they unanimously decided, both parties, that they were going to move that forward. So just a note for the audience.
And that's something we'll discuss here coming up as well. I also want to talk about voter turnout and how each of the candidates would attempt to increase voter turnout right now. Mr. Ballard, you just proposed a voter guide that would be produced by the Secretary of State's office. You had a press conference on this yesterday. Should that be one of the new Secretary's top priorities? 60 seconds.
You mean this?
You got it right there.
There are 2 reasons for our low voter turnout. One is lack of information. For instance, very few people in Indiana know there are 2 constitutional amendments on the ballot this year. And as you see with this voter guide that was very comprehensive, not just in paper form, but in app form that interacts with Google Maps. It's very extensive, all the way through what the office does, who's on the ballot, who's running for office. Everything is on there right now, including where to vote, how to vote, and how to, if your vote is challenged, what do you do? But the second reason is we don't have competitive races in this state in November. I think that's the root of the toxicity and the heated rhetoric due to gerrymandering and the virtually closed primary system. There's one candidate who's going to win in November. That's the root of all this. Low turnout, non-competitive elections. That's why.
Mr. Bayh, is this something you would support? How would you work to increase voter turnout? 60 seconds.
We have one of the lowest voter turnouts consistently in the country. And it's my belief that our country, our state, is at its best when there are more voices participating in our democracy, when the marketplace of ideas is more robust and there's more debate going on. So we need to tackle this problem. The largest contributing factor to low voter turnout is not a lack of information. People are inundated every day with information on how to vote. The largest problem that we have is apathy. And apathy is driven in large part by some of our elected officials, the Secretary of State, the current Secretary of State included, looking out for the interests of their donors and their political party and not the people of our state. when you have people getting out no-bid contracts to their largest donors, hiring relatives to newly created positions, taking trips all over the world that still go unexplained. How can you blame folks for not wanting to involve themselves in our political process? That's why we're going to independently audit this office on the first day to regain trust of the voters, to decrease apathy.
Let's clarify here in 15 seconds, this idea of voter guides or something similar. Is that something you would support?
I don't think that that's the right way to tackle this problem. I'll give you a few reasons why. One, I think the cost doesn't make sense. It's around $2.5 million by Greg's own estimation. Now, the budget of the election division of this office is around $8 million, so you'd be eating up a lot of that budget that needs to be spent elsewhere. But more importantly, perhaps, than the cost, I don't think it's a good way to actually solve this.
Mr. Bayh, thank you. Yeah, sorry, that was just a clarification, and if you'd support that particular initiative or not. Mr. Engling, you were vocal about this yesterday. 60 seconds to you on this topic. Why is it something you do not support, and what would you do to increase voter turnout instead?
Voter turnout is a major issue in the state of Indiana. I think the first thing that needs to happen is we need to know who is on the voter rolls so we even know what the turnout is, and we're committed to making sure that we clean up the voter rolls so we have a good estimation of who's actually out and voting. And I would agree, I think $2.5 million for a piece of paper that's going to be mailed to every house is not the best idea. What we need to do is lean into how people now get information. It's things like emphasizing our veterans who should be registered to vote, working directly with our county veteran service officers to get that information to them. It's working with community foundations in new ways. So it's saying to high school students, if you want to get credit to get that scholarship, go to your school for an hour and help give information to your students that are around your peers. It's also things like building off-the-shelf toolkits so that when a clerk says, hey, we've got an issue, we don't know how to do this, they don't have to be mandated this information, but they can be given something off the shelf so that they can pull new voters in, register voters, and make sure that they're effective in their position in every county.
Mr. Ballard, I know you mentioned you wanted to respond, but first to Ms. Shillings on the 60 seconds. This idea of voter guides, something similar, is it something you'd support? What would you do to increase voter turnout?
Yeah, the original question was to how to increase voter turnout. Correct. So the reason we have a low voter turnout is people are absolutely exhausted by bad options on their ballot. I've been campaigning for 18 months, and every single community that I've talked to has the same response. I'm tired of bad options. We need somebody better as a candidate, and that's why I decided to step forward. The other part of that is trust in our elections. When you have national leaders spouting off information about voter fraud, when there's very little actual evidence of that, people decide they don't trust that system anymore. And I would like to bring full transparency to this office by making those actual audits that they do after the election, the certification audits, make that more public so people understand that we are doing things to make sure our elections are secure. And if there's any issues, we then say we've addressed it and fixed it.
Mr. Ballard, did you wish to respond to Mr. Bayh and Mr. Engling on this and their concerns about the cost here in 30 seconds?
I find it interesting that both major parties seem to not want the voter to have the information which to vote. That's pretty interesting to me. Also, the cost. You think about $2.5 million to do this right way with the paper and with the app. However, the state, pays $10 million for every election cycle for the primaries. They're very closed primaries. Exclusive clubs that you're not invited into, but they want you to pay for it. If we do away with that, the state's ahead $7.5 million. Make them pay for the primaries, we'll do the voter turnout, the state's ahead $7.5 million.
Mr. Ballard, thank you. Mr. Engling, 30 seconds. You wish to
Just make a quick note on this issue of sending out a $2.5 million paper to voters across the state is that our team and other folks have sent us information that they built in 15 minutes to get this for free, that you can do right now to get this information to folks in a way that they actually digest it. We don't need a $2.5 million document that someone is going to throw away. We saw that the budget is $8.4 million in the Secretary of State's office now. Do we need a 40% increase in the budget of that office just to send paper to someone that they're not going to read? No, get them information the way they digest it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction. I know we're going to come back to voting because it's so important, but Mr. Bayh, you did mention some of the incidents that have occurred in the current administration, Secretary of State's office. There have been questions raised about the way the current Secretary of State has issued contracts, spent money, and traveled. What would you do in 60 seconds to try to instill confidence in the Secretary of State's office again?
My first act as Secretary of State of Indiana will be to open an independent audit into this wasteful spending that has gone on for the past 4 years in this office. We're in a room tonight with Democrats, Republicans, the Lincoln Party, and Libertarians. But I think regardless of the party that we may find ourselves in, we can all agree that taxpayer money spent on newly created positions for your family, on world travel we still don't know the purpose of, on no-bid contracts for large donors, that's unacceptable. And government corruption looks a lot like an iceberg. The top 10% is just what we know, which I just described. The 90% lurking beneath the surface we need to uncover. We need to see who else is complicit in this and hold people accountable. So that would be my first act, and I hope everyone on the stage tonight can make the same pledge.
Mr. Engling, you defeated the current Secretary of State holder in the primary. Tell us what you would do in 60 seconds. Not actually what you do in 60 seconds, but you tell us in 60 seconds what you would do to reinstill confidence in the office.
I would note that I'm the only candidate that has actually stepped forward and done something about what we've seen. I ran in the convention and won, and took the step to now be the Republican candidate so we can move forward in a different direction. I'll also note lightheartedly that as someone, I'm one of 8 kids. I have 6 sisters. They're all married. I have 1 sister-in-law and a brother-in-law. That means I have 7 brothers-in-law. I've told all of them, nobody's getting a job in the office. Now, I will also say that I have been a part of a transition on a statewide office. I have also been transitioned as a staffer. I know what it looks like to do that job well, and I'm committed to working with our team, with others that have been in the office, others outside of the office, to make sure that on day 1, we present a new vision, a new path, new processes, that we keep the folks that are doing well, but that we execute the office the way that Hoosiers want us to, so that they have confidence in elections and the other 3 divisions.
Ms. Shillings, 60 seconds on the same question about reinstilling confidence in the Secretary of State's office.
Thank you. The first thing I would do is, again, as Beau said, audit that budget to make sure there's no fraud or abuse. That's something that you should do on any regular business cycle. It shouldn't be a special occasion. I would assess the team that's currently in place to make sure that they are playing to their strengths and understand the challenges that they have when they're actually running the office. I would like to make our election certifications more transparent so that the general public will have confidence in our elections again. And then after that, I may not get it done in the first 100 days, but I would like to address the website itself, where we don't have 404 errors when we're looking for help. When we make a mistake, we can easily self-correct instead of having to make a phone call during business hours. And I know that's been one of the top things that I have talked about in this race, that business entities specifically want that website to be improved.
And Mr. Ballard.
Well, 3 of us up here will surely do an office-wide audit immediately. At least 3 of us will, I know that. Travel expenses, as Beau was pointed out, will be a particular point of emphasis. But that office really needs stability. It needs some dignity. It doesn't have it, and we all know it. One of the things that we would have to do is to root out those who are complicit in what has been going on in that office for the last 4 years. We're going to root them out. Those who are not part of it will be welcome to stay, but some will not be welcome to stay again. That office needs to be a shining light in the state of Indiana, and it is not right now.
I do want to go back to something that both Mr. Ballard and Mr. Engling referenced, which was the state Senate primary, in which just a handful of votes have changed and were thrown out because they were not properly marked by local election officials. What does that situation tell us about the voting process And how can you ensure, if you are elected, that people's votes will count? And Mr. Engling, we're going to start with you, and you have 60 seconds.
You need to have confidence as a voter in Indiana that your voice is heard, that your vote counts. And I think when you look at what happened with the recount commission, they followed the law, they looked at every ballot, they said, does this match the code? We have code for a reason. And then on the other side of it, they said, as a unanimous decision, that they were going to put forward that decision that they made. It's being appealed now, they can have that conversation further. But I think it's important to know that they're following the law. I would be interested to know if anybody else on the stage here would prefer that they don't follow the law as they're going through a recount commission. But it's very important to make sure that every voter has the confidence that their vote will count.
Ms. Shilling, 60 seconds.
Right. The Recount Commission did their job, their duty, as they were directed to do by the laws in front of them. I have no issue with that. What I did find is that there are human error, and how we correct that is with tools and training. We make sure that the host of materials that are available to our county clerks are actually functional, that they can use them, and that they understand them. And that's what I would like to help do, is to ensure that they have the tools and training that they need to execute their jobs correctly, so that we don't have that marking error when ballots are either mail-in or submitted.
Mr. Ballard, you brought this issue up earlier tonight. What would you do to provide voters confidence that their votes will be counted?
I think offline computers with a paper trail is important. Standardization will be, well-trained poll workers is important. The government-issued photo ID, which I think we all agree on, will go a long way with that also. But I would take issue with the fact that there were 8 voters who were comfortable that their vote was secure when it was cast. And even more people were scared when they were going to be asked to subpoena, to be issued a subpoena to see why they voted the way they did. The Secretary of State's office needs to be free from politics. You can say all you want that, both parties are, that doesn't matter. The recount commission should be 5 retired judges. It should not be it should not be a Republican and a Democrat and the Secretary of State who is a political being. It should be 5 retired judges who are free from politics. If we do all those things, then I think people will feel a lot more secure that when they put that name down, their vote will be secure.
Mr. Bayh?
And Max said something that I think bears worth repeating, that I agree with. Every voter should have the confidence when they go to vote that their vote counts. But I ask you, how can every voter have the confidence that their vote counts when, of no fault of their own, their votes are cast aside because of a technical error on the part of a government worker? That doesn't make sense to me. If the intent of the voter is clear, which it seems to be in this case, and there's been no evidence of tampering or fraud, the votes ought to be counted and the will of the people ought to be fully represented in the election results. And just to go back to the point of subpoenas, which is an important one, I believe you said the decision was unanimous. That is in fact not the case. It was a 2-to-1 decision. The Republican representative, at least one of them, voted to haul voters in our state, Indiana, in front of a judicial body to potentially perjure themselves about their decision at the ballot box. Think about that. Is that the type of leadership we want in this office? I don't think so.
So we'd like to see a show of hands here, and then you'll have 15 seconds to explain what you indicate. Who believes these votes on stage, who believes these votes for Senator Deary should indeed count, that were thrown out by local election officials because they were mismarked? The votes that were thrown out for Senator Deary by the Recount Commission because they were mismarked by local election officials, do you believe they should count? If you do, raise your hand. 15 seconds to explain, Mr. Bayh. I'll start with you. Yeah.
I just gave my reasoning for this. When a voter goes into the voting booth, they should have faith that their vote is counted if they've done everything right. I support voter ID. If you've showed your voter ID, if you've proven your identity, if you've done nothing wrong, and you mark your ballot according to the way it's supposed to be marked, and a clerical error happens on the part of a government worker, it doesn't make sense to me to cast aside the intent of the voters. That doesn't make sense, particularly when there's been no evidence, even alleged evidence of fraud.
Thank you. Mr. Ballard, do you wish to explain further?
Ditto. Exactly.
Mr. Engling, 15 seconds, you disagree.
So we do have to have the tools in place so that clerks have the understanding and election administrators have the understanding of what to do. But I would question whether both of these gentlemen would prefer that they violate the law We have code for a reason. If in the recount they would want them to violate the law on each and every one of these ballots. I would doubt it, but maybe they would say they would.
30 seconds, Mr. Bayh.
I know you're not an attorney, but my understanding of state statute is that the intent of the voter matters. So in fact, they would follow the law if they followed the intent of the voter. And there's been no evidence of fraud or tampering, as we've already described.
Obviously something that will be up to the courts, and obviously something that we will continue to follow and talk to these candidates for Secretary of State to get their views on. We want to turn to another topic here.
We need to let Ms. Shilling just see that chance to
My apologies.
respond.
I know the Libertarians are often overlooked.
No.
Thank you.
Go ahead. 15 seconds. My apologies.
So I do think that the law is written so if the intent of the voter is clear, it is to err on the side of the voter rather than the error of the worker. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that that is what could have happened, but it could go either way according to how you interpret the law.
All right, let's talk about another discussion right now, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, known as the SAVE Act. It's a Republican-backed federal proposal aimed at ensuring that only U.S. citizens register and vote in federal elections. And it's included a debate over whether states should retain all of the autonomy that they currently hold over the voting process in their respective states. And there's also been a lot of discussion about mail-in voting and the president's executive order that would limit who can receive mail-in ballots. A lot of that is in the courts right now, and it's up to the courts and the Congress. It could be up to the General Assembly here. But what would your position be as Secretary of State, Ms. Shillings, on some of these very important discussions right now? 60 seconds to you.
I think the SAVE Act in its current form is a barrier to voters. I believe that it disenfranchises people who absolutely should be able to vote. I think that it is an undue burden for individuals who have changed their name, married, or adopted, can't locate their original birth certificate. They're not able to go and easily obtain that information and still participate in our democracy. So I do think that it is an excessive cost for those individuals. It costs about $178 to go get your passport, not including any fees to go get your original birth certificates or your marriage or divorce certificate. So I do think it's kind of a poll tax on women and people who are disenfranchised with that. Mail-in voting has been secure for decades, and I think we should be able to continue that. Our current president even uses mail-in voting, and it's not his job to tell us how to administer our elections in the state of Indiana.
Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds to you.
Yeah, well said. This looks like when you read the articles, they mention that this is like the first inning of a 9-inning game right now that's going on. But what Laurie said is correct. This federal intrusion, once again, trying to come to the state level, and we know they're doing it for a political basis. We all know that. We need to ensure the security of our elections. But having to go get your passport, having to go get your birth certificate might be not so accessible. That's a problem. I think what we have been doing in this state is pretty solid, and any additional federal intrusion makes no sense to me whatsoever. That is not how it was intended from the beginning, and I think it's served us well over the last 250 years.
Mr. Bayh, 60 seconds to you on this question.
A lot of what the SAVE Act is trying to do at the federal level, we already have here in Indiana. For example, voter ID, I support that. What I don't support, and Lori mentioned this, is the impediments it would create to vote for women who have changed their last name, providing proof of identity via a birth certificate of passport. I don't think that makes sense, particularly in Indiana when we're already doing a good job securing our elections. I trust the 92 county clerks, if given the resources to handle our elections appropriately, can do that. And they call me crazy, but I don't think I want a lot of folks from California, Illinois, or Kentucky who are serving in Congress to tell people in Indiana how to run our elections. I think we do a pretty good job of that. And the framers were clear, as I mentioned earlier tonight. We have delegated authority to the states to run elections under Article 1 of our Constitution. I don't think that should change.
Mr. Engling, 60 seconds to you on whether you support the SAVE Act.
I appreciate both Mr. Ballard and Mr. Bayh saying that we're doing a great job here in Indiana on elections. I agree with them. I think we are doing a good job here. We could do better, but we're doing a good job. And one of the things that is a little bit interesting to me is that if the Save America Act was passed right now at the federal level, which I am an advocate of, it would affect Indiana very little. So if we are doing a good job right now, and the Save America Act would affect Indiana very little, why would you not support the Save America Act? It's not political. It's not, it is an 80-20 issue, maybe a 90-10 issue, that you have to have an ID to vote. Some of them said they agree with that. It's also important that we have only eligible citizens voting in our elections. And if you think that that's not true, we can have a conversation afterward. We have to know who's voting in our elections. It is sacred. And if you think that it's something that's not important, I would say you fundamentally disqualify yourself for Secretary of State.
Mr. Engling, thank you. Ms. Shillings, 30 seconds here to follow.
So the thought that we have people who are not able to vote already voting, I think is a fallacy. Our current Secretary of State has found one individual in the last many years and have hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to accomplish that one goal. So there's very little evidence of voter fraud. We have checks and balances in place for a reason. Identification checks are currently very valid. The license that you have, and you have to show your photo ID, I am in favor of. I think the additional steps that the SAVE Act has is not necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Engling, you wanted to follow up on that as well.
I would just make a note that in the report from December of 2025, there were 165 folks that were on the voter roll illegally. There were 21 that voted illegally. And when you are sending someone forward to be the chief elections officer in the state of Indiana, and they think even one illegal vote is too many, I would conclude that they are not a good candidate for the Secretary of State.
Mr. Bayh, 30 seconds.
I agree, one illegal vote is too many. So I ask you, why have those people not been prosecuted? Under whose watch were they registered? Under whose watch did they illegally vote? It's time for a change, folks, because that's unacceptable. I agree. We need people participating in our elections that are legal to do so.
Mr. Ballard, I'm curious, 30 seconds to you. Do you believe we have a problem in Indiana with people voting who shouldn't?
That recorded was 0.0004%. And we all agree that one is too many, but it was 0.0004%, and we spent how many thousands of dollars to figure that out. Mr. Bayh is exactly right. What have we done about that? Not much. Not much for the State House. If that was egregious, as Max Engling says so, then what have we done about that?
All right, I really am going to change the subject at this point. Indiana wants more entrepreneurs to start businesses here in Indiana, and the Secretary of State plays a crucial role in the registration of businesses. What could the Secretary of State do to make starting a business in Indiana easier? And this question goes first to Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I think, first of all, as has been mentioned already, the website is ancient. It's hard to believe that when you go on that website and how you have to navigate that. It's, I'd suggest, 20 years old. And it takes some effort to get through there to register and do all the proper things for the state of Indiana, to register a business in the state of Indiana. Other things we can do, though, is maybe we have to refile in 2 years. Maybe we can spin that out a year or two more so the businesses don't have to worry about that sort of thing. We have to make it easy for businesses. I'm sure we all agree that entrepreneurs are very important to the state of Indiana. But I would suggest to you that the Secretary of State's office is not kept up, and there's some rather simple things that we could do.
Mr. Bayh, what are your thoughts?
It's a very important function of this office, particularly in the folks in the room here tonight. How does this office act as a good partner to the new entrepreneurs in our state? A few things that we can do which would make a positive impact. First, don't use the business division of this website as a means to promote the office holder, which is currently the case, and instead use it as a means to highlight the tools that already exist, which help business owners. For example, if you go on the business division website of this office, and you click on the button, I want to start a business in Indiana, you have to scroll through about 3 pages of self-promotion on the part of the current Secretary of State before you get to a great resource called the Small Business Development Center. That's a fantastic resource. It makes entrepreneurs aware of lines of credit that may be available to them and other things that are pertinent to their business. Why are we not highlighting resources like that and instead using the tools which this office oversees as a means of self-promotion? That doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Mr. Engling, what do you see as the Secretary of State's role in promoting entrepreneurship and making it easier to start a business?
I'm going to take a step back again and say the state of Indiana is doing a good job on this front. We are a business-friendly state. There's a reason why in the Midwest we have a net positive incoming growth in the state of Indiana, because people want to be here on the business side. They want to put roots down here. Now, as somebody that has filed for a small business in the Secretary of State's office myself, it was pretty straightforward. You know the information you need to have, you put it in there, you file it, and you can proceed. There are ways that we can do a better job of it. You submit a lot of information as a small business owner to the state broadly, and the system should do a better job of talking to each other behind the scenes so that I'm not submitting a whole bunch of information repetitively that should already be gathered by the state of Indiana. The focus should be, both by folks in the office and the system itself, that business owners should be more focused on growing their business, on hiring Hoosiers, on being successful and making money than weeding through the bureaucracy of the State House. So there's improvements we can make, but Indiana's doing a good job.
Ms. Shillings, what do you think, what would you see as your role in promoting entrepreneurship?
This is something I'm very passionate about as an entrepreneur myself. I've had to hustle using 2 or 3 jobs to get by through my lifetime. And often when I'm working on my dream at 11 o'clock at night after I've put my family to bed or finished my day job, that's when I'm working on my business. And that's when I'm interfacing with the Secretary of State's website. I don't always have the luxury of calling them during business hours. And so the website itself, the user interface, after decades of experience in marketing and in advertising and in running businesses for individuals, this is one of the things that I'm most passionate about, is correcting that website, updating it, making sure the user experience for people is flawless. And as a window to Indiana, your website should be the first thing people interact with and think, man, that was super easy, and I should be able to do whatever I need to here. And that's some of the things that I would like to address as Secretary of State.
I'd like to have a 30-second follow-up from everyone that's part of this question, which is there have been some questions about the information that people are required to provide when they start a business, and lots of people using registered agents, etc. Do you believe that when people register their business, that the owners should be noted on the registration? And we'll start with you, Mr. Ballard. Should the owners of the business should someone registering a business be required to list the owners of the business?
Yeah, I think that's a wise move, actually. I think we need to know who's going to be owning the business and whatever iterations they go through to do that. I know lawyers do lots of things to maybe obfuscate that, but I think right off the bat, I think that's a good thing to have on that website.
Mr. Bayh, same question to you about whether ownership should be listed.
I felt that dig personally about lawyers. But I think that makes common sense. To register your business, you should have to put the ownership on it. So if we need to get a hold of them, we can.
Mr. Engling.
I would note that the State House has given new tools to the Secretary of State's office already to verify some of these, the ownership of these LLCs, but I would also note that we've been very aggressive in talking about the issue around shell trucking companies, and that is one of the issues that we're talking about right now, where if you file an LLC in the Secretary of State's office, you employ drivers that are on the road that don't have a commercial driver's license with English proficiency, or they're not here legally, they get into a wreck, which we've seen, people are injured and die, then you dissolve that LLC and refile a brand new one just to escape the repercussions. That's a problem, and we have to know who has ownership of those if we're going to do something about it.
Ms. Shilling.
So as part of website reconstruction, what we can do is make that portal more transparent on who owns these businesses, as you said, registering the owner's name. And then we can understand, cross-reference that into a database that says, hey, this person now has 20 different LLCs, and maybe one of them is one that has become fraudulent. And then we can understand better how to work with our office to track them in what they're doing.
I'm going to stick with the business function of the Secretary of State's office for just another minute. This question is going to go to Mr. Bayh with 60 seconds. The Secretary of State's office maintains this tremendous amount of data about businesses, but it's not always easy to search, and it's not always easy to compile and use. Are there ways that that information could be made more useful to entrepreneurs, researchers, and the public while still protecting privacy where needed?
Of course, we can provide that data in a searchable PDF format in an Excel document and make sure that there are the requisite protections in place to hide personal information from it. And if that helps business owners in our state, I'd be all for that. This office is very important in the way that it helps business owners. And one of the things I hope to do is, one of the best parts about this campaign is I get all around our state and I meet great entrepreneurs like that are in the room tonight. And we have some great young people starting businesses in our state that are very creative, but they don't always have the tools necessary to balance their balance sheets and handle the back office, which is an essential part of any business. And so I'd like to use this office, in addition to publishing that data you just mentioned about in a responsible way, to inform some of our new business owners about basic financial accounting, how to balance your balance sheet, things like that are essential to any good business.
Thank you. And Mr. Engling, the question to you about, are there ways that the Secretary of State's office should be making data more available to the public? 60 seconds.
This is an interesting one because I hear from a lot of folks all around the state that use this website all the time. And I've had folks say, hey, it's a great website, keep it up, I use it all the time. And I've had folks say, it could be way better. But I think it's always good to listen and to say what's working well, what can we make changes on, and how do we make it most useful to the business owner, because that is the end goal. We want the business owner to get the information that they need, and it's not just business owners, it's also realtors and a lot of other folks that get into the information. And so you want to make it very effective and efficient for them. We're certainly committed to doing that, to listening well around the state to the folks that actually use it and create as much efficiency as you possibly can.
Ms. Shillings.
So this office handles more than just business data. So we would also like to track if there's fraud in a business, as we previously spoke about. The other thing that people want to have more transparent is who's paying for your elections. So if we had a cross-reference database that says this election has had a donor by XYZ, easier to find, and then you can say, all right, that super PAC has these many donors, and you can find out for sure who's paying for your politicians. I think everyone in Indiana would find that really wonderful. That's something that I would like to implement so that we can find a template that works at the state level, and it'll make it easier for filing. It'll make it easier for everyone to understand who's doing what and for what money. And then once we have that template established, we can bring that down to the county levels as well, so it's easier for those county clerks to file their paperwork for candidates, file paperwork for donors, their election fundraising that goes along with that. So that's one of the things that I think would be very efficient and to use that data.
Mr. Ballard, how would you approach this question about making more data available to the public?
I find it fascinating that anybody would think that website is good. I mean, it's important. It largely registers businesses, which is very important, and there are other things that can be done on there. But I do think it's important, as a state that values its entrepreneurs, to have the ability to link to what state-provided resources to help businesses in that way, but also linked to outside resources that help. Because entrepreneurs, as Ms. Shillings knows, and so many of us know, they're looking for information. How do I do this? How can I grow this business? How do I get money? What do I have to do? What are the compliance I have to do with the county? All of these things can be on that website or linked from that website. And it's really poor right now. I think we need to do a much better job to help the entrepreneurs in our state with that.
Thank you.
Some great business questions from the Indianapolis Business Journal
Absolutely.
for the Secretary of State candidates. I want to talk about another topic that came up earlier as we talk again about voting, and mail-in voting in particular. Do you think it's reasonable for states and their election officials to expand things like mail-in voting or satellite voting in the wake of a public emergency? We saw that debate play out in many states over COVID, and we also just endured significant flooding, as the Indy Chamber president referenced at the outset, flooding and storm damage here across our state. What if something like that had taken place right before an election? Are there any circumstances where you think it might be reasonable for the state to expand voting access because of an emergency? Mr. Engling, I'll start with you, 60 seconds.
I think it's important to note that Indiana is doing a great job. You've heard me say this before. They're doing a good job on what we've seen with mail-in ballots. I think it's important for folks that are serving overseas to have that access. It's important for folks that are homebound or nursing homebound to have that mail-in ballot access. It's something that we want to preserve. I think it's also important to note that what we don't want in the state of Indiana is just blanket mail-in ballots for folks that have not even requested them. A key part of the office of Secretary of State is to instill confidence in our voters so that they know when they are taking and putting their vote out there that they can have confidence that it's going to count. Now, specifically around a natural disaster or other emergencies that we've seen, I wouldn't want to project too far into the future. I would say you would have to look at each individual thing and say, what is the impact? Is it getting to the ballot box? Is it across the entire state? Is it something like a pandemic? And make those determinations on a case-by-case basis rather than saying now. We would certainly do that.
Ms. Shillings, 60 seconds to you on that. Are you think there are circumstances where it might be reasonable to expand voting access because of a public emergency?
I agree that it would need to be on an instance basis, so that you would have to go in and look at that and say, all right, do we have enough time to logistically provide mail-in ballots to those individuals in those areas? I would like to see, do we have a mobile voting station that we could bring closer to them, and rather than something that's, you know, in an emergency, you see all the helping trucks that are there with either supplies or water work or filtration systems. Can we provide the same thing with a voter booth? I mean, those might be options. If we think visionary towards the future, that is something we might be able to provide. If they're not able to leave that area because of an emergency, can we bring the votes to them? And to ensure, using the same standards that we have now, use the e-book, make sure that they're all registered, and then give them the democracy that they deserve.
Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds to you on this one.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a very difficult question, actually. We have to always do this consistent with security in the intent of the voter. And whatever that looks like in any particular emergency or any particular situation, it's absolutely fine to expand the parameters of being able to vote. As long as we have the consistency of consistent with security and making sure that the voter intent is very, very clear. Those are the two things I worry about. Everything else is kind of on the table, depending on what the situation is. Can we go out and help them vote? Can we do this? Can we do that? Those things we have to look at as a government and frankly as a people. Do we want to go help those people vote? I think that's certainly what we have seen here in the last couple of weeks in the state of Indiana with the help that's been involved, including Beau. He's done such a magnificent job. But as long as it's consistent with the security and the voter intent, I'm fine.
Mr. Bayh, 60 seconds to you. Are there circumstances where you think it might be reasonable to expand voting access because of an emergency?
These floods have been just a devastating scourge on our state. I was in Ravenswood recently helping some folks there clean up. And of course, I think, given the circumstances, had they happened closer to the election, we should make every reasonable effort in our state to help folks who are devastated like that still participate in our democracy. And I'm glad Lori brought up mobile voting. A friend of mine is the county clerk in Porter County. She did just that. She had a mobile voting station that came to some voters who are not moving so well, and some elderly people, and made it a little bit easier for them to participate. But I want to echo something that Greg said. Security is paramount. It has to happen in the way that it's supposed to happen under state law. Show your ID, you're verified through the system, and cast your ballot. But I think if there are exigent circumstances like you described, Dan, we should make every reasonable effort to accommodate people.
We've got some familiar names in politics, certainly in this race, and some new names too. So we also want to know tonight how your background shaped you for this role, and if elected, how would that background shape your thinking for this position? Ms. Shillings, I'll start with you, 60 seconds.
Well, this is a story I love to tell. I grew up in a small community in Montgomery County called Wingate, and my dad served our community for more than 50 years as a fire chief. So I grew up watching him serve his community, not because he was paid, because everything there was completely volunteer, but because it was necessary, and he didn't want people to have an emergency that he couldn't help them. So that heart of service is what I want to bring to this race. I grew up because when you see that, people need help, you step up and make sure it gets done. Kudos to Beau for going to the flood zones. Very good. That's the kind of thing that I think is very important, to serve your community because it needs to be done, not because it's in the news, not because it's a headline or you're getting paid to do it. It's because you want to do a good job and to make sure that you're serving your community.
Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds to you on how your background might shape you for this role.
Well, my story is probably a little bit better known with this audience. I was just a knuckleheaded kid that kind of struggled with structure and motivation. Did okay at IU if you think that 6 years in the summer to get the 4-year degree. It's just fine. But as I've said repeatedly, my life changed very forcefully and very much in a positive direction when I joined the Marine Corps. And ever since that moment, my life has been about public service. 23 years there, 8 years as the mayor. Even in the past few years, my intent was always to help people, working with nonprofits. That's just who I am at this point, and I'm proud to be that way at this point, and that's what this race is about for me also.
Mr. Bayh, 60 seconds to you on your background and how it's helped shape you.
Yeah, I mentioned at the outset, I was raised in a family of public servants. And so growing up, I saw firsthand the impact that you can have in a public life. My granddad Birch, who I know some folks in the room here tonight knew, was able to pass a law called Title IX, the United States Congress, and which allowed women to compete fairly in college athletics. And so every time I see young girls throughout our state and our country looking up to someone like Caitlin Clark, I think a little bit about him. When my dad was leading our state, they instituted the 21st Century Scholars Program, which has allowed hundreds of thousands of kids all throughout our state to obtain a college degree with no debt. And so growing up, you see the impact that you're able to have firsthand through this life, and that's obviously inspired me to do this my own way. Like Greg, I was a United States Marine. I was an infantry officer. And being in command of Marines from every walk of life teaches you something about leadership. How do you orient a diverse group of people toward accomplishing at times very difficult missions? That's the leadership experience I'm going to bring to this office.
Mr. Engling, 60 seconds to you on your background and how you think it might shape you for this role.
As the second oldest of 8 kids, there wasn't a whole lot of education money running around. So I started working from a young age. I worked all the way through my time at both Ivy Tech and IUPUI to get my degree. While I was working construction in school, we built the extension onto the Community North Hospital. A note, my son was later born in one of the rooms that I helped construct there, which was an awesome feeling. But in this race, I have the most experience for this particular role. That's because I've worked in small businesses across the state of Indiana. I've filed my own small business with the Secretary of State's office. I went to Washington and I worked for the Chief Elections Committee in the U.S. House, which constitutionally oversees the elections on the House side. And then I've worked with the legislatures, both here in the state of Indiana and federally, to build coalitions so that you can get the priorities that we're talking about across the finish line here in the state of Indiana. So a unique background of hard work, but built directly to do this job professionally.
Mr. Shilling addressed this a little bit, but I wondered if each of you could, I'm sorry, Mr. Engling addressed this a little bit, but I wondered if each of you could take 30 seconds and give us an example from your background, a specific example that explains something you've done that voters could envision then tells them something about how you would perform in this office. And Ms. Shillings, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to the opportunity I had to lead the Libertarian State Party Convention during COVID, where we had to find innovative ways to do secure voting, to establish credentialing, and to make sure that everyone had an opportunity. We had to overcome local jurisdictions of health departments saying you couldn't meet in person. We had to get permission for that. And we had a successful convention. We were very innovative in that way, one of the first ones in the state to do a hybrid convention.
Thank you, Ms. Shillings. And Mr. Ballard, a specific example.
I need about 2 hours for that. Good, Mr. Mayor.
Just pick
30
one.
seconds.
Just pick one. 30 seconds.
No, sorry. I talked about the $800 million in sewer re-engineering and the Six Sigma parking meters we improved, brought the technology in. Net revenue to the city, $330,000 to $3.5 million in a 2-year period with better customer satisfaction. Also, Mayor's Action Center might be most appropriate for us right now. We created a call center that instead of a few minutes, we had a few seconds to pick up the phone below industry standards. And we put an app out there so that people could take a photo and send it in.
Thank you. Mr. Bayh, a specific example that would give people some thought about how you would perform in office in 30 seconds.
One of the things I'm most proud of that I was able to work on in my service in the Marine Corps is that when Russia invaded Ukraine, I deployed as part of our nation's response to help the Ukrainians defend themselves. We were doing some very important top secret intelligence work and sharing some information with Ukrainians that was helping them keep their state alive. And as a Marine, Greg will tell you, you're working off of little sleep, off of little information, in austere environments, and despite all of those factors, you have to lead men and women and accomplish the mission, and I had to do that during that mission in particular.
Thank you. Mr. Engling.
I built the curriculum around new member orientation in Washington, D.C. So a freshman member wins their race, they come out to Washington. Your job is to help them figure out, how do you even do this job? And my immediate boss, his dad got very sick. He had to take off about 3 months before the election happened, handed it over to me and said, run. And what I found is that you have to work hard, but more importantly, you have to delegate well. You have to build a strong team around you so that when you hand something off, they can lead because you've set the vision, and they can execute when you delegate that off to them.
A 30-second follow-up here. We just talked about your past, and I have a question here about your future. It's a question that's come up throughout the campaign on what a victory in this race might mean for the winner and their future in politics. Mr. Bayh, I'll start with you. If you're elected this November, do you commit to serving a full term as secretary, or might you consider a run for higher office?
I have every intention of serving honorably in this office for a full term. I think the office demands that type of attention. What we've seen gone on that has happened in this office is, on a bipartisan basis, frankly unacceptable. And it's going to take, unfortunately, some time to clean that up. So it's going to demand my full attention.
Mr. Engling, 30 seconds. Do you commit to serving a full term if elected?
I am certainly committed to fulfilling a full term in the Secretary of State's office. We have a lot of priorities that we want to get through. It's election integrity. It's ensuring that we have more transparency. It's creating a better business office here in the state of Indiana. And so you have to have a full term to do that, in my estimation, and I'm committed to doing that full term.
Ms. Shillings, 30 seconds.
I have every expectation of fulfilling the 4-year term. I want to do this job for the people of Indiana. I have no anticipation of serving for another office. I want to do it well, and I want to do it for you.
Mr. Ballard, 30 seconds. Do you commit to serving a full term?
I do, and as I said earlier, we need to provide stability and dignity to that office, but even more so with what we're doing in the larger picture. I want to open up the voting systems. I want you to have more and better choices in the future. I want more people to be able to run for office in the future. We are horrible about that here in the state of Indiana, and that really has to change.
We have time, I think, for one more question before we go to closing statements. And we have 2 candidates in this race who are from third parties, the Lincoln Party and the Libertarian Party. And so I want to start with Mr. Ballard to say, why do you think it's important? Why are your candidacies important in this race? And should the state make it easier for independents and third-party candidates to run?
I think most people in this audience knows what I had to go through to get on the ballot. It was purposeful, it was punitive, so that people can't get on the ballot. The 2 parties are in power, and they want to stay in power. And the laws and the policies are in place to make sure that happens. Only 1 in 5 registered voters can run as a Republican and Democrat. 1 in 5. And they are trying to make sure that no one else is able to run. We have, as I said, voter choice in here in this state of Indiana. It's terrible. Terrible. We think a lot of the heat, the toxicity in our politics is because there are no competitive general elections in November. And we all know that. 95% of the legislature was just decided by 10% of the people in May. That has to change. We need competitive elections, and what we're doing and the way we're doing it will ensure that.
Mr. Bayh, can you address a little bit of what Mr. Ballard was talking about in terms of whether the 2 major parties are controlling the elections, but also address whether you think it should be easier for independents and libertarians, or independents and third-party candidates to run?
Well, I agree that our primaries should be kept open. I think that it doesn't make sense if the taxpayer is funding our primary system that our state should be able to close it off to private clubs. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And I do agree that we need more competition in our state politics. You know, in my legal practice, I work a lot on antitrust matters. And there's a reason we ban monopolies in our country. If there's one store in town, they can charge consumers whatever price they want, and there's no incentive to offer a better product. The same is true in this respect in government. If you have one group of people in charge of everything, which has been the case in our state, it does not lead to accountability on behalf of the office holders, and we've seen that a perfect manifestation of that in the current Secretary of State. So of course I want more competition. I think iron sharpens iron. I believe in free markets. Competition in the market helps the consumer. Competition in government helps the voter.
Mr. Engling, what are your thoughts about third parties, independents, and major parties in elections?
I would agree with Beau that competition is good. I think that that's a positive thing. We saw from the former mayor that he did that. He got on the ballot. He was successful. But I think that it's also important to know what do each of those parties stand for. I think it's important to say, here is the platform that I'm bringing forward, and then I'm going to live that out, or I'm going to tell the voters what it is that you're actually putting on the ballot. It's not just ballot access. It's defining why you're running and what it is you're running for, and in many cases, we have yet to see that happen.
And Ms. Shillings, can you talk about ballot access and also what your thoughts are about independents and third parties?
So, should we make it easier for more people to get on the ballot? Yes. Competition brings better candidates to the front to talk to you people like we are today. Why is it that way? Power structures like to maintain power. Libertarians have been having ballot access for 32 years, and we do it every year because it's the Secretary of State's race. We get 2% or more, and we usually overperform. And that allows local candidates at county level to run for their school boards, for their county councils, for their park boards they're appointed. So that gives us an option for better candidates. Libertarians had ballot access at 0.5%, and immediately once we reached that threshold, they raised it to 2%. So competition is not always appreciated by major parties.
Mr. Ballard, brief follow-up here, 30 seconds.
I find it fascinating that people talk about what's the platform and the principles. It's not like either major party actually follow the principles of the platform. They haven't for decades, and we all know that. I will tell you what we stand for. We stand for having practical, problem-solving people that you'd love to have in office. That's what we stand for. That's what we're going to be going forward. It has to change here in the state of Indiana. We can't keep doing what we're doing.
Thank you. It's time for our closing statements tonight, and we're going to be moving from the right of the stage to the left based on a random draw from before the debate. Mr. Bayh, 60 seconds. I'll start with you.
Well, thank you so much again for everyone attending tonight. This has been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed it. We've gotten to talk a little bit about our visions for the office and about a lot of policy that's important. How are we going to increase voter participation in our state while keeping our elections secure? How are we going to help business owners in our state create good jobs and fuel our economy? How are we going to root out securities fraud, which is another important function of this office? But this campaign, which I hope you will support, is about something beyond just policy. I think we can all agree in the room tonight that the amount of divisiveness and fear and anger that has consumed our politics is not healthy for our country or our state. And one of the best parts about serving as a Marine in the infantry is the units that I was in command of came from every walk of life. We didn't always agree on everything, folks. Just like everyone in the room here tonight likely does not agree on everything. Lord knows the four of us don't. But despite the differences in the units that I led, we came together to achieve some very difficult missions. I want our politics in our state to look a little bit more like that. That's what this campaign is about.
Mr. Ballard, 60 seconds.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Leslie and Dan, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it very much. If you're tired of the toxicity and the heated rhetoric in politics, I'm suggesting to you that this is the year. This is the election to change the government in Indiana. I will run the office independent of politics, and I will work for the people and not the parties. We will work to make November elections competitive again. Let me be clear. I'm running to make every vote matter, make sure that every vote counts, and to make it easier for Hoosiers to vote. And to make it less cumbersome for good, problem-solving, practical people to run for office in the future. Thank you.
Ms. Schilling, 60 seconds to you for a closing statement.
Thank you. What we've been doing isn't working. We hear it in the headlines locally and nationally. The dissatisfaction of the voters in Indiana has been heard loud and clear over the last 18 months of my campaigning. People over the state want something better. They want someone who actually represents them and their lives, that they actually live in their communities. They're not interested in someone who has water to carry for Washington, D.C. Nothing changes unless you vote differently. I'm Lori Shillings, the Libertarian in this race. Your vote has power. Please use it for change.
Mr. Engling, 60 seconds.
Thank you to everybody that's here today. I appreciate you being here to listen. So as the candidate with the most experience for this role in the race, I am asking for your support so that we can build on the good things that the state of Indiana is doing. Now, I'm seeking to win, but not seeking to win just for the sake of winning. I'm seeking to win so that we can build on good policy here in the state of Indiana, so that we can have election integrity, improve that even further, so that we have transparency, so that our business fraud is stopped, the folks that are filing fraudulently, that we stop that. And as somebody that is feeding a family of 6 here in the state of Indiana, I want this state to grow and be better, not just for this next election. I want it to be better for the next generation, so that my kids pick Indiana to live here, so that your kids pick Indiana to live here. So I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd, and if you want more information, you can go to maxforindiana.com to find that. I'm asking for your vote. God bless.
All right. Our thanks to Mr. Engling. Our thanks to all of the candidates for being here. Our thanks to all of you as we hear tonight from the candidates for Secretary of State. Thank you so much.